Hello, and welcome to the first ever USA Triathlon Leadership Virtual Town Hall. My name is Victoria Brumfield, and I'm the Chief of Staff of USA Triathlon, and I'm here alongside my colleague, Chuck Menke, our Chief Marketing Officer. Together, we'll be moderating this online forum with our executive leadership team serving as the panel. We will ask and answer some of the most popular questions we've received as a way of providing an update to our members, our key constituent groups, and the entire multi-sport community.
Thanks, Vic. As the national governing body, many people outside the sport look at USA Triathlon as an Olympic and Paralympic federation, which is absolutely true. But we're also primarily a nonprofit, membership-driven organization that serves nearly 400,000 individuals and sanctions approximately 4,300 events each year at the local grassroots level. So with some areas of the country now starting to open up, we thought this would be the perfect time to give an update on recent progress at USA Triathlon and across the sport in response to the significant impact from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thanks, Chuck. Now that you've met Chuck and me, let's introduce the rest of the USA Triathlon Executive Leadership Team. First, we have our Chief Executive Officer, Rocky Harris, our fearless leader and avid triathlete who has done a tremendous job strategically guiding the organization through this entire crisis. Tim Yount, our Chief Sport Development Officer, has been with USA Triathlon for 29 years, and he oversees membership, education, and sport-related programming. Nellie Viner, our legal counsel, who is in charge of, among many important things, our risk management approach and the model for our insurance policies.
Next, we have High Performance General Manager John Farah, who is responsible for our U.S. national team programs, including Olympic and Paralympic elite athletes, and our development pipelines. The most recent addition to USA Triathlon is Katie Willamark, in the newly created position of controller, which means that she heads up our accounting team and all of the organization's financials and budgeting. And last but not least, Dave Deshane is the first ever executive director of the USA Triathlon Foundation, our charitable arm that supports youth participants, paratriathletes, and Olympic hopefuls. Rocky, we're going to start with you. While the original intent of this town hall was to exclusively discuss the impact on the sport in the context of COVID-19, we first want to address our pledge to push for racial equality across the sport in the aftermath of George Floyd's tragic death and the global call to action for civil rights. Rocky, USA Triathlon issued strong statements via social media that were well received by our audience, which was very encouraging to see. Moving forward, what steps is USA Triathlon prepared to take in proactively addressing this issue?
Thanks, Chuck. I really appreciate the question. It's something that I'm personally very passionate about and have been my entire life. You know, USA Triathlon is an apolitical organization. Our staff and our board are comprised of people with varied political backgrounds and beliefs. And I believe that the Black Lives Matters movement should not be framed as a political issue, but instead a human rights and decency issue. We are firmly committed to stand with the Black community against racism and social injustice. We are fed up with the abuse of power that resulted from a flawed system that allowed for the murder of George Floyd and many, many others. Personally, I've grown up in and around the Black community. In fact, I was recently told that my high school has 60% more Black students than white. My closest friends to this day are the ones I made in high school. And I saw firsthand the impact of prejudice and racism as we got pulled over while driving, only when my Black friends were in the car. Or when I was involved in a fight when two of my best friends were called the N-word at a game when we were playing against the mostly white school. It hurt me deeply as a white person, but I can't even begin to imagine the negative impact it had on my Black friends. I hate to admit that over the years, I've become numb to the racism that exists in our country, and I stopped taking action and just talked about how bad it was for the Black community and how they're under attack, but really never did anything about it. I became part of the problem too by staying silent. I refuse to sit on the sidelines any longer. It would be a disservice to my close friends, my Black nephews and nieces, and humankind in general if I'm not a part of the solution by taking action and refusing to accept the injustices any longer. Our country was founded on some basic ideals: equality, opportunity, justice, freedom of speech, and freedom of assembly. And if anyone knows me, you know I'm a history buff. And our country was born as a revolt against the powers that led to the revolution against Great Britain. And I see many similarities to the Black Lives Matter movement today. where people are fed up with being oppressed and living in an unfair society where they have to play by different rules. The framers of the Constitution of the United States intended to articulate the aspirations of America to become a more perfect union with a very specific focus on justice. The founders were abundantly clear with their intentions for America, and we have to continue to advance those ideals for our country's potential to be fully realized. The Black Lives Matter movement is in complete alignment with the founders of the United States and the framers of the Constitution. We recognize that our sport is not living up to the American ideals of equal opportunity and access, and we have been working on addressing this for many years. But now is the time to make bold and dramatic changes to our sport. We believe that our sport will never become mainstream if the participants and leaders don't match the demographics of the American society. While we have publicly been an advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement through social media posts and emails to our members, they don't have a lasting impact. The changes need to come from the inside out. We have to dismantle the system that created the inequity in our sport, and we have already begun to do that. We worked with our board of directors to look at the structural opportunities for change in our sport and where we can make the biggest impact on increasing diversity. We feel strongly that it starts at the top with the board of directors as they set the strategic direction for the organization. 3 years ago, we were predominantly male and 100% Caucasian board of directors. Now we have 2 African-American board members, including the first in USA Triathlon's history, a Hispanic board member, and more females than males. We also felt that we needed to provide access to people interested in advancing within our sport. So last year we created a scholarship program that pays for conferences, coaching and race director certifications, and much, much more. We did not want money to be a prohibitor. We found a gap in awareness for people from diverse backgrounds to get more involved in our sport. So we have launched a Pathways initiative by surveying our diverse members to see where they would like to be involved in USA Triathlon and where we can get them involved at all levels. If our committees, regions, and working groups are not diverse and people don't have a seat at the table, we cannot expect our sport to become more diverse. We have many diversity programs, from advancing NCAA triathlon to historically Black colleges and universities, to our foundation investing millions of dollars in local programs around the country. We are proud of those advancements, but we are committed to building a long-term, overarching diversity and inclusion strategy rather than continuing to develop a lot of unsustainable one-off programs. We will build this with the help of members of underrepresented communities. We already have a few hundred people who've reached out to us to help advance our diversity efforts in our sport. I always separate the words diversity and inclusion because it is important to know the difference. Diversity is whether our sport is open, accessible, and represents all communities. There is no doubt in my mind that our sport has a diversity issue based on the lack of representation. Inclusion, on the other hand, is how welcome we make people feel after they've decided to engage in our sport. The silver lining is that, for the most part, our sport is very inclusive and welcoming, regardless of someone's race, sexual orientation, or gender. We have to break down the barriers to entry for the Black community, and I'm confident that people in our sport will be inclusive and welcoming when we do that. Our commitment is to listen, learn, and change. We need to be intentional in our efforts to make real change, and every decision we make as an organization will use the lens of how it will benefit diversity efforts in our sport. Thanks, Chuck.
Coronavirus has had a devastating impact on the multi-sport community. So let's talk about what's happening in the sport today. Tim, what is USA Triathlon doing right now to prepare the sport for a safe and successful return?
You know, Vic, it's really, really hard to believe that it was over 3 months ago that we started having these discussions on the creation of a safe return to multisport, which really was a blueprint that created an overarching unified approach for safe, and I say safe twice, opening of the sport. And it's amazing how time flies. What did we create? We created guidelines, recommendations, training plans, and they covered our key constituencies, our race directors, our athletes, coaches, club leaders, officials, and yes, even volunteers who in this time frame are really, really hard to recruit because of this situation. But what made this especially hard, I believe, was that we had to not only understand where we need to go as a sport, but we had to align with the federal, state, and local authority statutes to make those work for us as well. when you break this down as a staff, you start thinking about all the other entities that need to really affiliate with you to create a solid plan. And we've certainly done that with some great folks to help us. Experienced race directors, medical experts, our certified coaches, our club directors, our officials, our USAT committees, which have been actively engaged with us, our leading age group athletes, and other endurance sport leaders. We've also relied very heavily on, and these are agencies most everyone should know, CDC, WHO, OSHA, the USOPC, and the International Triathlon Union, or ITU. It's interesting, when we first built this, we had several people coming back to us, athletes that said, there's no chance I'm going to race with a mask. And if they went back and actually read the document we created, we said, it's an option to race with the mask. So fortunately, we've been able to clean that language up and make sure that no one is feeling compelled to have to wear a mask during a race. Certainly other things around events, yes. To race, no. Race directors have come back to us and asked, do I have to do the self-questionnaire assessments prior to my events? Do I have to do the temperature checks? And do I have to have medical teams doing a further assessment? These are recommendations that we're supporting. And so no, that isn't necessarily required by us, but the municipalities could require it, which would mean that they would have to shift their policies on what they're actually going to do. The first recommendations actually flew out the door on May 7th, and the response has really been very favorable. We've been very surprised by that because it's very stressful times, but been very pleased that people have come back to us saying, these are some great plans. But we also know the half-life of information from local and state health organizations and other government agencies is about 6 hours, very fast. And so we continue to adapt our documents and make changes. And at the bottom of each of our documents where we have made changes, we've made it very clear what's changed within the actual recommendations themselves. So hopefully that answers your question.
So Tim, building off of that, what is the current status of locally sanctioned events in the country?
Well, fortunately, we're seeing races come back in certain areas of the country. Early on, Indiana, Alaska, Hawaii, Texas were quick to allow races to be held. This past weekend, we actually had 2 sanctioned events, which may not seem like a lot, but it was a really big step for us. Currently, we have over 20 in-person races slated for June and many more expected in July, 2 of which include Ironman 70.3 in Lubbock and Muncie. Very large races with very big footprints that we'll certainly learn a lot from. One of the things that we've also talked about internally is through all these things that we've created, we feel like our race directors, the staffs, the volunteers and athletes are ready. They're ready for safe events. So if you're out there as an athlete looking to find your race schedule and tighten it down a little bit, please make sure you choose only sanctioned races. To create a close to your question, Chuck, we're optimistic in our approach about the ability for sanctioned events to continue to return this year. And I feel like through everything that we've created, the regions are looking forward to reopening and will be doing so much more aggressively over the next several weeks. Again, dynamic, ever-changing situation. So we'll continue to obviously to monitor the state and local government guidelines to make sure that what we do is in line with those agencies.
Thanks, Tim. Nellie, we want to turn to you as our legal counsel. You oversee risk and insurance, and USA Triathlon provides insurance for sanctioned events and members. What do both race directors and participants need to know about insurance and what's changed at events?
Vic, it's a very timely question. I think a lot of people are asking themselves and us about insurance and risk. If you're a race director and you sanction with USA Triathlon, you'll be covered. You'll have some insurance coverage if an athlete gets COVID-19 at your event, allegedly, and then sues you for negligence. So the insurer will most likely, according to all facts, provide a legal defense. Now, if you're an athlete and you're participating in a USA Triathlon sanctioned event, you get what's called participant accident coverage. Now that layers on top of whatever personal coverage you have, and it's designed to protect the athlete if they get injured or sustain any like medical, like health issues at the event. So if you're an athlete, you will not be covered under the participant accident policy at USA Triathlon sanctioned events.
Following up, immediately after the COVID-19 crisis hit, USA Triathlon began to lobby Congress in an effort to include our sport in the emergency stimulus package. Where do advocacy efforts stand now?
COVID-19 is a global pandemic. It affects everyone. It has touched everyone's lives in every industry, in every constituency group, particularly the endurance space. So USA Triathlon became a founding member several months ago of the Endurance Sports Coalition. So that's Ironman, Spartan, Tough Mudder, USA Cycling. We have over 500 members to date. What we're doing is we're getting together and we're lobbying Congress and congressional leaders to find some sort of economic sustainable relief for entities that host and hold events such as triathlons. So more to come on that. It's pretty exciting.
USA Triathlon hosts national championships across the country for youth, collegiate, and age group athletes. We also support qualified athletes in world championships, which we refer to as Team USA. Tim, can you talk about how USA Triathlon is approaching its own national level events like age group national championships for the rest of the year?
Yeah, Vic, let me run through the short list and some of our key events. The first that I'll mention was the Duathlon National Championship and Collegiate Club and High School National Championships, which were forced to be canceled because of the pandemic. We've been able to find a home, and we found it in Lake Havasu City, Arizona in October. And so we felt it was important to have these races still take place in the calendar year, and we were fortunate to be able to close those a couple weeks ago. The second event, Legacy Triathlon at Long Beach Patco Sprint Triathlon America Cup. We are just informed this week by the city of Long Beach that they are going to be unable to issue a permit for our event due to local restrictions on gatherings. So unfortunately, we are going to have to cancel this race. The good thing is that one of the national championships that was part of the Legacy event, the Toyota USA Triathlon, for the Toyota USA Para Triathlon National Championship, has found a home in September, which we'll be announcing later this week. There are many people that have asked us too about deferrals. And so one of the things that we will unfortunately not be able to do is to move this event to another date, but we will allow people to defer their registration to the same event in 2021 or 2022, or USA Triathlon owned events in the same 2 years. Junior Nationals, we were really, really concerned that there wouldn't be any interest from coaches, but when we did a survey a couple weeks ago, they were quite supportive of getting their athletes out of their homes into an event where they could actually compete head-to-head. Unfortunately, it's not up to our coaches to host this event. We do know that Ohio is a fairly slow state in opening up to mass gathering sports. And so it's still in the hands of the local municipalities and the state as to what we're going to be able to do. But we remain optimistic and hope that we can still host the event. Unfortunately, because of the timing of the race, we are not able to reposition on the calendar in the case that it is canceled. But like the other event we mentioned with Legacy, we do have an extensive deferral plan that will be in place that is actually located on our website. The Age Group National Championship is the one that we've probably gotten the most questions about. Numbers are actually really, really good right now. But one of the problems that we have is with an event that is as big as it is, that there's a lot of things that have to be done. We've created an extensive plan that, internally through our teams and through other people that we've consulted with, that we've submitted to various agencies and groups to say, take a look at it. What are we missing? We feel really good about it. Hopefully you do as well. The mayor, the LOC, and other groups are starting to take a look at these types of plans to see if this is possible for us to host the race. They're also looking at economic impact as to what the impact would be if they can't host the event. We've been told that we'll know in a few weeks the status of the event. In the event that is not held, we will defer athletes to 2021 or 2022 Age Group Nationals or the other USAT-owned national championships. The last part that you asked in your question is about Team USA, and this is really important for us. With the ITU Multisport World Championship slated for Almere, Netherlands in September 2021, we were able to create a hybrid qualification system where we allowed for all the athletes that were on this year's Team USA to requalify without having to go to another event that we would host. This has been very good news for the people we've communicated this to in the last couple of days. We're also still going to allow for the events that we set up for qualification to qualify the athletes for the events that are part of the Multisport Championship. Aquabike, aquathlon, long course tri, sprint do, standard do, and then off-road triathlon. For the grand final in 2021, we were able to receive another infusion of slots from ITU to get us up to 25 per age group. We have created a qualification system that is still dependent on where the ITU event will go. If it's Bermuda, we have a set of qualification programming that we'll unveil to the athletes. If it ends up sliding to Edmonton, which was the projected host site 2020, it will change the qualification criteria ever so slightly. So we're not quite prepared to announce that one yet, but we will be doing so hopefully within the next couple of weeks. So that's a little bit of the overview on our events and Team USA.
Dave, now we want to talk about what is being done to support and sustain the sport at the grassroots level. You've been closely involved with these efforts. Can you please talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Chuck. The USA Triathlon Foundation is the charitable arm of the governing body of the sport, USA Triathlon. And through that program, our primary mission is to transform lives through sport by providing opportunities to swim, bike, and run. Fairly straightforward. We want to encourage more people to participate in the sport of triathlon. Over the course of the last several weeks, we've all been impacted by the crisis. And during that time, we created and executed a fundraising campaign via our virtual duathlon presented by Tower 26, a run, bike, run online challenge with the USA Triathlon Foundation's COVID-19 Relief Fund as the primary beneficiary of the event. We allowed participants to participate for free to get fit, healthy, active during the time of the lockdown while maintaining a safe distance. But we also had a charitable component to it where members could participate, make a charitable donation to the foundation, and 100% of those proceeds of those donations went back to support our COVID relief fund. Those funds in that program would be used to provide charitable grants to support our race directors, our coaches, our clubs, and other members that were impacted by the crisis. I'm excited to say that we exceeded our goal of having over 5,000 participants, and in fact, we exceeded 6,100 participants total in the event, and we also raised over $110,000, and it's still counting. We still have a variety of other programs that are currently in place where we continue to raise funds to support that relief fund. We've just recently closed our grant application window. We received more grant applications than we had ever received before, and we received just shy of $1 million in requests of funding through that grant program. So clearly we can see that the crisis is real and it's really impactful to the members of the multi-sport community. We also worked with some of our sponsors who were supportive of the event and in turn supporting our community that was out there.
Dave, that's amazing. You talked about the success of the virtual racing experience with the Run Bike Run. And I'm curious, we're all learning so much about virtual racing right now. Where do you see virtual racing in our sport in the future?
Yeah, Vic, that's a great question. You know, if there was a silver lining in the entire crisis, it's that the current conditions have really kind of accelerated the exposure and acceptance of virtual racing. Not only are we at USAT kind of leading that charge on virtual racing, there are a variety of other race directors, organizers, event groups that are creating virtual races across the country, and we're seeing participation in the thousands of participants at these events. It really bodes well for the future of the sport by lowering barriers of entry for newcomers. Those participants can walk out their front door and do the first part of the run. They can ride their bicycle from the garage around their neighborhood. They can jump in their backyard swimming pool. So, you know, in terms of encouraging more participation in the sport, a virtual race is a great way to begin.
And Dave, that's a great segue to National Triathlon Week, which we want to let everyone know begins June 22nd, and which also marks the kickoff of #TriWeek Virtual Challenge presented by Tower 26. This online race is a 2-week run bike format with both competitive and non-competitive divisions. There is a free option, but we're using the event as essentially a membership drive. So for a very limited time, $50 will not only get you an annual membership, You will also receive a finisher medal and be eligible to receive part of a $10,000 package worth of prizes from corporate partners of USA Triathlon, including a treadmill by Trueform.
And speaking of international racing, our Olympic and Paralympic athletes have been living and competing around the world in preparation for Tokyo, and their world's just been flipped upside down. John, can you talk about how our elite athletes are holding up, and where do things stand with the season for the national team this year?
Our athletes have been really handling this exceptionally well. They're professional, they're resilient, and they're determined to achieve their high performance goals, even in these most challenging of circumstances. And of course, each athlete has had to adjust to come up with the best plan for them, given their environment and the resources they have access to be ready and to feel ready when the return to racing comes. On our side, we continue our regular communication with our national teams, including like this on Zoom video, and we continue to look for ways to support them in any way possible, including I'd like to highlight the recent partnership with Talkspace, who provides online mental health resources for our athletes. And I'd like to focus on a few projects that our athletes have been doing to give back during this time. Our para-resident team in Colorado Springs created a ride across Colorado to raise money for charity. That starts on June 19th. Melissa Stockwell has been making efforts to highlight our healthcare workers, and our national team athletes have been recently doing virtual drop-ins to the junior high performance teams all around the country, sharing their stories and giving them a little bit of inspiration to the future stars of our sport, which has been a lot of fun.
John, following up, what impact does the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games being postponed until 2021 have for USA Triathlon and the sport as a whole?
Yes, unfortunately, the timeline for the games has been set back. And of course, that has created some complications related to the qualification timelines and the qualification procedures themselves. But I'm pleased to report we're in a good place overall. We've been meeting regularly with our selection procedures committees. And after each of these meetings, bringing our athletes up to speed on our guiding principles that we expect to work with, providing the athletes and coaches some time to provide feedback before any procedures would be amended officially. This open and regular communication with our athletes has actually been priority number one ever since the season started to unravel in early March. And it really has provided an opportunity to keep us more connected during this trying time. But in the end, we live and breathe by our Olympic and our Paralympic dreams. And we're thrilled for the opportunity for a 2021 Tokyo Games and the national exposure opportunities that provides for our sport and for our athletes with new events on the program, including the new mixed relay format. We're going to do everything in our power to support our athletes in their goals to qualify for and achieve their peak performance at the Tokyo 2021 Games. And that's enough to keep us fired up and focused as we move forward.
Okay, now we're going to turn to finances. Katie, how is USA Triathlon financially dealing with the significant impact of COVID-19 as it strives to serve the multisport community?
Sure, thank you. Our financial longevity has been an area of great focus for the entire team here at USA Triathlon the past couple of months, as we are working to ensure that we place our members and constituent groups as a top priority. We knew that COVID-19 would impact our business, not unlike every other business in America, and it has. Our membership and events revenue is down because races cannot take place, and to account for the reduced revenue, we've been taking every measure possible to reduce expenses, except for those that we consider to be absolutely necessary. While we consistently maintain a budget that has strong fiscal stewardship, during this time, we started looking for ways to further reduce our spending. One example of this was making the magazine digital for a period of time, which greatly reduces the cost of production and mailings. In addition, many of our costs are tied to racing, so while we are eager to return to racing, we have also been able to keep these expenses minimal during this period. We were also able to secure more than $900,000 in government assistance programs under the Payment Protection Program, which has helped greatly with our operating costs. This program allows for a portion of this loan to be forgiven, and we plan to fully maximize the forgiveness of this loan. And while this program was a game changer for USA Triathlon, personnel is a big component of what we do here. So unfortunately, we did have to make a reduction to our team under a voluntary leave program. Finally, I would add that management and the board of directors have prepared well for something like this. We have worked to build reserves in the past, and we will need to access some of those reserves during this time, but we have plans in place to rebuild. Through our expense reduction, help from the Payment Protection Program, and in using some of our reserves, we feel that this will help ensure the financial stability of the organization.
Rocky, this has been so helpful and informative, but I'm sure that you want to leave our members with one final message. What would that be?
So thanks, Vic. As an athlete myself, I know how difficult it's been the last few months to go without racing. My entire race calendar has been disrupted, so I feel for you. But I feel even worse for the local businesses that are being impacted, our race directors, our clubs, our coaches. They're literally, this is their livelihood, and they're going out of business, many of them. So what I would ask of you is to reach out to your triathlon, your multi-sport community, give them words of encouragement, find out how you can help, and show them that you're supporting them. As we come back to racing, as we are right now, I think our community is going to be even stronger than ever. And this is really a time to lock arms and show that we're there to support each other. So for our athletes out there, our coaches, our clubs, our race directors, everyone involved in our sport, thank you for all you're doing, and know that we'll be back stronger than ever.
Thanks so much, Rocky. And on behalf of our leadership team and the entire staff at USA Triathlon, we want to thank everyone who has reached out to us with their questions. Hopefully this was informative for those watching at home. Please stay tuned to our social media channels and the website, usatriathlon.org, for continuing information and the latest updates, or feel free to reach out to us directly for assistance at any time. Be safe and be healthy.